Today on Locked On Red Wings, are changes coming to the roster? Todd McLellan hints at a possible shakeup.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you can catch us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Scotty, on today's episode, Todd McLellan said something interesting yesterday, and it's circulating around Red Wings social media, in that the reason they brought up Nate Danielson is because they wanted to see what they had in him, because he was playing well in Grand Rapids, before they make any decisions on players. And that has Red Wings social media kind of in a buzz, because what does that mean, right? Does that hint at something as drastic as trades coming? Or is it something more simple? We'll discuss all the possibilities here on this episode before getting back into Nate Danielson, talking about his debut more at length and what our expectations of him are now that he's with the team, assuming that he's here for more than just that one quick highlight game, to take a peek at him. So before we get to that, got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Scotty, as I previously mentioned, Todd McLellan in the post-game media availability was asked about Nate Danielson. And he said, we wanted to see what we had in him before we made any possible decisions about other players. When you heard that, right, after I sent that, you may have heard it before that, but I sent you the link with the clip from Red Wings prospects on social media. What is your first knee-jerk reaction to that kind of honestly bold statement for the head coach to be making?
Yeah, first off, I appreciate it. I think we've talked a lot about McLellan's forwardness and his bluntness, I guess.
Bluntness.
And
candidness.
I think that this certainly falls into that category, but I think that a statement like this is one to, again, kind of challenge the players. And he has not shied away from doing that. We have seen, even after the first game of the season, the Wings were 0-1, and he was like, don't you guys get tired of just losing all the time? It's like, well, we're 0-1, but then they went off and went on a 5-game win streak. So I think it's a problem if the team constantly needs to be threatened or publicly shamed to be playing good hockey. But in the same breath, it's not something that he has shied away from either. So I certainly welcome it. I don't think that is a threat for wholesale, massive changes, but I think it is kind of a nudge to the young players, the rookies, and to maybe some of the depth options that aren't producing right now. We've already talked a lot about Michael Rasmussen. He got healthy last game, so I think that he probably falls into that conversation. Berggren maybe as well, although I think we've both agreed that he's looked, fine so far this season. We talked about ASP last week and his shortcomings so far in his NHL career. I think all of those guys kind of fall. Certainly, comp for comp, all of those guys are somewhat under that umbrella for a comment like that. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them are going to get, cut or demoted or traded or something. But I think it is kind of a means to be like, hey, no one's job is safe. And ultimately, if you don't produce, you don't play. And that's the bluntness, I guess, that I appreciate about McLellan. And I think that's the point, at least from my perspective, that he's trying to get across.
I agree with that, especially the regards that I appreciate the candidness. There are only, and I say that with the caveat that there are only so many times you can publicly call out your team and yell at them in practice and get the reaction that you want before it begins to fall on deaf ears.
Right.
So you can only rattle the cage so many times, right? You want to keep that in your back pocket for bad times. So the fact that it's had to happen 2-3 times already this season to get the team going is definitely something that is of concern, and we will be watching as things move on. But at the same time, I really respect the way he handles doing that as well. Some coaches will go out there and they will publicly embarrass their players to an extent that it's over the line. McLellan will say, like, I think this player played poorly today, and they're going to hear it from me in the locker room. And I think he handles it in a way that's honest and tells the people what he's seeing in an honest fashion, but is respectful to the players. I don't think any player can watch what he says to the media and go, I can't disagree with that, because he's being truthful, but he's being respectful in that as well. And I thought the way that he handled this was respectful as well. And you're right. I think there is an element of rattling the cage here. I think he's threatening his players to a degree, right? He's putting them on notice, I think is the better way of putting it. He's putting them on notice that, yeah, we're calling up these young guys because, and he said it, the team's not scoring. And so we're seeing what we have in these players so we can make decisions on other players who aren't contributing. He does not care, and this is another thing that I respect so much. He does not care if you're a veteran or a rookie. He doesn't play favorites. If you're not producing, he will sit you. And nothing is more clear than that than with Michael Rasmussen, who is he's been around since, 2018 is when he made his NHL debut, might have been 2019. Yeah. He's in his 7th NHL season, even though he's still youngish, right? He's younger than Dylan Larkin. He's 26, I believe. But he hasn't been contributing this year. And honestly, he's probably off to the slowest start of his career with the puck and off the puck. His off-puck impacts are as bad as ever, with the exception of the penalty kill. But the last game he played, he made a mental error that led to a penalty kill, a power play goal against, because he didn't cover the late guy. He got caught puck watching. So he's been put on notice. So is Jonathan Berggren, and this is a guy who's been on notice for a while, right, Scotty? He is, and to his credit, he is trying really hard, but, results have to matter. And the results just haven't been coming for Jonathan Berggren. So, yeah, he's putting his team on notice to let them know, we want to know what these young guys can provide. Now, my follow-up here, and you kind of already answered it, is how real do you think this threat is? Do you think that changes are coming to this group?
I think to an extent that's on the table. But again, I think there's varying degrees of, changes to be made. Again, if they lose their next 2 games, they're not going to trade Larkin. No, there's I don't know. It's on a kind of like a spectrum. It's changes can be made, but I think it's more targeted toward the fringe roster guys anyways. And I mean, McLellan said it, we've talked about it a lot. They just aren't scoring, and they have to find a group of guys that is not only capable of playing the style that they want to play and implementing that system correctly, which even in the losses lately, they have been doing. But that system only works if you can actually put the puck in the net.
Again, results have to matter.
Right, exactly. And so it's, I think it's again, a situation where the top 6 is not going anywhere. They're not going to trade into a rebuild just because they lose their next couple of games. But I do think that if the scoring continues to falter, that, again, guys like Rasmussen, guys like Berggren, really take your pick of any of those depth guys, I think is probably in the conversation. ASP is certainly in that conversation as a guy who was brought up in order to not score goals necessarily directly, but impact the offense, and just kind of hasn't really any of the defensemen that find themselves on the bottom pair. Any forward in the bottom 6 outside of Danielson, I think is probably we can even.
I love how you're essentially listing off the entire roster at this point.
Well, it's one of those situations where it's not all of those names, but it's any of those names. Does that make sense?
No,
it's not, all of that is not going to change, but anybody in that group, I feel like, can be kind of the victim of that. So it's
all of those squares are rectangles, but not all of those rectangles are squares. So
yeah, man. Yeah.
Scotty, why don't we head to break? I personally think the threat is real, and I want to list you off. You've said it, right? Within varying degrees. I have 3 categorized degrees in my head in which this threat could be
tiers, if you will.
Tiers, right? So we'll talk about that in segment 2, and then we'll talk more about Nate Danielson in segment 3. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making the late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty. So, like you said, the threat is real to varying degrees. In my head, when I was thinking about this episode, I was trying to think of how he could have meant it, right? Because it was one sentence by Todd McLellan. We are extrapolating to try and parse through and figure out what he means. Like, let's be real about this for a second. It could mean nothing. Nothing could happen. But when I'm trying to think of the severity of impact a sentence like that could have in real results, real things that could happen, the first thing I think of is somebody's getting sent down. Like, that could be the first thing that happens, or just scratches continue. But I feel like it's got to be more than a scratch if you're saying we want to see what we had in this guy before we make player decisions. Because you've already made the decision in scratching 2 guys by just bringing him up.
Yeah.
So I feel like more has to be on the way in regards to maybe a player gets sent down to bring up an extra defenseman or something of that caliber. Has to be the minimum. So I look at then, okay, who is the easiest players to be sent down? And I look at the rookies, right? Finney and ASP. While that is a possibility, I don't think that is what's going to happen. I actually think that while that's the easiest roster change to make, it might be the least likely because Emmett Finney has not been the problem.
Yeah, yes, Finney is going nowhere. Yeah.
Right. His production may have fallen off lately, but it's not from lack of effort. Like, he is in dangerous situations time and time again. How many times in the last 2 games has he been on odd man rushes or put himself in the slot? We talked about the game, two games ago, where he had 5 shot attempts and all were scoring chances. He gets those on net, he's going to start scoring again. Like, I'm not concerned about Finney with the way he's been playing. Even,
I mean, one of my favorite things I say on the Tiger Show all the time too is, like, an organization will tell you how they feel about a player if you just listen, and like he has still played top line every game. Like, there would be some rumblings of like, oh, like maybe Finney's gonna move down or whatever. Like, they're not gonna demote a top line guy that literally has not wavered at all in his deployment or production.
Right. And then to add to that, who did they have on the second power play unit all day yesterday or 2 days ago? It was ASP, Finney, and Nate Danielson. And McLellan praised them in postgame that they were more productive on the power play despite the 0 goals than the top unit that couldn't even enter the zone. And so I think all 3 rookies are safe. ASP, metrically, he's struggling. He is having a rough time. But we brought it up last week. Like, who do you replace him with that's going to be better? Like, I'd rather ASP be here, struggle in those minutes, and make progress as an NHL player than have Justin Holl and Eric Gustafsson up on the NHL roster who are struggling in those minutes and have nowhere to go, right? Like, it's going to be, we already know what we have in those players. ASP is only going to get better and adjust to the NHL level if he's playing NHL. Now, he may end up getting more sheltered deployments going forward and might get, basically, he might be on the second pair, but get more closer to third pair minutes as they try to ease up on his deployment and get more power play time. But I don't think he's a candidate to get sent down either, just because I don't think there's anyone who's going to be better than him that can be called up, and I'd rather see him develop at the NHL level. So those two right away, they may be the easiest to be sent down, but I think they might be the least likely. So then you turn your attention to, okay, the two healthy scratches, Michael Rasmussen and Jonathan Berggren. When it comes to those two guys, they have got to clear waivers, Scotty. Do you believe that they, if placed on waivers, would clear waivers?
Yeah. Honestly, I think Berggren probably has a better shot than Rasmussen, but even like Rasmussen, the only reason that's more of an if is because of like the contract. Like he's not just on, like a league minimum or whatever. Like he signed a deal. However long that was ago already. So I don't know. I think that it's certainly not a guarantee, but I think that there is, maybe you don't want to risk losing Michael Rasmussen to your organization. I'm not sure the Wings are going to be put in a position where they're like, oh, we can't afford to lose Berggren.
Yeah. And so here's the thing is I think there's less of a chance that Rasmussen gets picked up than Berggren. Just simply because he's got 2 years remaining at a 3.2 and he's not producing at the NHL level.
Sure, yeah.
So he may, because there are also teams that could use the extra depth help and he could provide assistance on that. But I personally am not willing to put either of those guys on waivers, because if you're going to put them on waivers at that point, try to trade them, because I think that you can deal them for something. It won't be a lot.
They haven't.
I think they have been with Berggren for 2 years now.
Well, so you're not going to get anything for him.
Right. So
which means that he probably clears waivers. Like, I don't know. I really have a hard time believing. And then even if he does, like, I don't think like the Wings organization would be like heartbroken about it.
Well, just because a team's not willing to give you assets for a player doesn't mean they wouldn't be willing to take them off for free off waivers. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that's
a
little different situation.
I'm just saying, like, again, this isn't like, oh, they tried to trade him for like a couple of weeks over the summer. Like they literally have been open to trading him for years.
Allegedly,
now.
Reportedly.
Right. So I don't know.
What do you think the most likely situation is then? Do you think that, or do they just they don't need to make a move? They have 23 people on the roster now. Do you think they just keep scratching two guys every game?
Yeah, I think they keep scratching two guys until the McLellan comment is, to me, has more legs to it, or is more substantial if there's someone in the AHL that is actively like, oh, wow, we got to get that dude on the roster. They're not just going to send someone down just to do it. They're not just like, oh, we just like want to whatever, like send a message or like do this with no corresponding, move the other way. Like, no, they have the roster space. They'll just keep it if necessary. But I think depending on your opinion of the AHL roster is a lot more where that kind of stuff comes into play. To your point, like they're obviously not going to risk losing Berggren or Rasmussen if they're not even going to call anyone else up. They're not just going to do that for fun. So, I think that is much more the conversation than like, are they just going to do it to do it? No, but if they can do it, if they do it with a corresponding move, then obviously the conversation changes.
And my gut keeps telling me like waivers seems like it's the least likely out of all the options, just because I feel like if you lose Rasmussen, the team does get worse from a depth perspective. Like I don't know who you can call up that's one of those depth pieces
for sure
that's going to have a better impact than Rasmussen
defensive forward that plays special teams. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, at the same time, I know you can get guys like that, but I mean, Carter Mazur's hurt. Amadeus Lombardi doesn't provide that, and hasn't scored a goal yet, although he is over a point per game, but he looked like he needed still some seasoning in the AHL during the preseason. So it's just like, do you risk losing him? And then on the other hand, how many times have we had the conversation, oh my God, I can't see this player clearing waivers, and the next thing you know, they've cleared waivers. So I struggle with this is why I'm not an NHL GM, thank God, because I struggle with which is the most likely situation. I think, honestly, they may be shopping. We know they've been trying to shop Gustafsson, allegedly, reportedly, have been trying to shop guys like Gustafsson and Hamonic, who weren't playing at the time. Could they continue to try and shop other guys like Berggren and Rasmussen? Possibly. But it's just, he says something like that, and it just sparks an interest. And I don't know if there's an easy decision to be made here. And I think that's what makes this so interesting. The easy decision is to continue to scratch the players who aren't performing. But when you say something to the effect of, we wanted to see Danielson before we started making decisions on other players, people are going to start speculating. We're going to start speculating.
For sure.
So let us know in the comments what you think that this could mean, if anything at all. We're going to head to another break, and when we return, we're going to talk a little bit more about Nate Danielson, who got called up to see what he had. Stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I'm using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Hydration has become non-negotiable for you. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just overall better. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard, and keep your body and mind performing at best with Drip Drop. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, Nate Danielson made his NHL debut, and we talked a little bit about it after the loss to the Chicago Blackhawks and we didn't give it enough, probably, love that it deserved because of how that loss went, and plus they had lost on Friday. We had 2 games to recap. I thought Nate Danielson, for what it's worth, had a pretty impressive first showing in the NHL. And Todd McLellan said it in the post-game media availability. He probably would have made the team. He was on track to make the team before the injury occurred, which means we could have possibly had 4 rookies. He could have also squeezed another rookie out. We don't know. That's just going to go in what if history. But he's here now, and he looked good against the Chicago Blackhawks in that 5-1 loss. I want to ask you, when it comes to you, and because we did this with all the rookies when they debuted at the start of the season, like, what are your expectations of Nate Danielson going forward, assuming he's still around for a few more games?
Yeah, I mean, I hope he is. You mentioned the lack of scoring and kind of the shakeup that's needed in the bottom 6. I think Danielson's the perfect candidate for that. So I hope that he's here to stay. I mean, expectations are for him, honestly, if he can just do something similar to what we saw in Marco Kasper's first year, just the equivalent of that on the third line, then I'm a happy camper. I don't need him to score 30. I don't need him to, be some incredible high-end point producer as a rookie. But if he can be solid in the face-off circle, be just solid on both ends of the ice as a center, and man that third line, I think that would go a long way in that conversation about improving depth scoring. And I think that it gives you a little bit more versatility and flexibility in terms of what you can do with your lineup as well. And I guess that's kind of a Captain Obvious statement because they literally did that in his first games, right? With Kasper moved to the wing and whatnot. So I mean, I think I don't have like a specific, he has to produce this amount of points or this amount of goals in X amount of games. But if he can just be that reliable third line center, then I'm very, very pleased. And I think, again, looking at the whole organization, I think there's a legitimate argument he gives you the best odds of that. So I think you should just keep him up the rest of the season, even if he gets off to like a slow or something, really.
I think short term, he's already kind of given me what I wanted, which is just more improved center depth.
Yeah.
Larkin is your 1C now. Kasper got demoted to left wing 3. for the Detroit Red Wings because he's been struggling in the faceoff dot with the Detroit Red Wings start to a cold season. Actually, Marco Kasper, he's waivers exempt still? You don't think he's a candidate to be sent down, do you? When we're talking about the Todd McLellan comment.
Who?
Marco Kasper, he's still waiver exempt.
No.
He could be sent down without going through waivers. And he's struggled to start the season.
Yeah, I think that just puts you in a very similar spot. Like, you're going to do that, and then, I don't know. That just feels counterproductive for depth purposes. You're going to do that, and who is going to play more in lieu of him getting, demoted, and who's going to be that reliable? I don't know. I just
wanted to bring it up because I mentioned his name and it dawned on me. I was like, he could be a guy who gets sent down because he's struggling, but I also would struggle to believe because he's like the other guys where I don't think he's playing terrible. He just can't finish, but that's how we got into this situation to begin with. So anyways, I digress. I apologize. I got us off topic immediately.
No. Anyone is worth a conversation, really.
Seriously. I mean, we didn't even talk about the defense and how maybe waiving a guy to call up an extra defender to shake up the D-core could be an option. Who knows?
Well, right now you're healthying 2 forwards. I mean, I don't know.
You can send a forward down, call up a defenseman, carry 8. There's options. Anyways, Nate Danielson, he gives you that added forward depth, right? You have Larkin, Comfort, Danielson, Kopp, and Kasper as your center depth. Kasper gets right? If he can get right, you have Larkin, Kasper, Danielson, and then Kopp or Comfort on your 4C. That gives you the type of forward depth that I would want to believe would help the bottom 6 figure out the scoring issue. It knocks Michael Rasmussen out of center back to wing where he plays better. It knocks Kopp or Comfort off of center. Or vice versa, whatever you want. In this situation right now, Comfort's playing up on line 2, which I don't think he had a bad game centering Kasper and Kane and DeBrincat at all, besides the lack of finishing. But again, that's the whole team. We've already discussed they dominated that game at 5-on-5, and I thought that Kopp playing 4C was a really good center for the fourth line. So immediately in the short term, Danielson's already given me what I wanted and the additional forward depth to make every line a little bit better because it worked. They just couldn't score. So, I mean, I guess you could argue then that it didn't work, but they had the puck like the whole game. They had 45 shots.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess that's my point is like, if you do make a change and you swap a forward for a forward, you would only do that if the person that is being replaced you think could put the puck in the back of the net more. And I'm not sure there's a glowing candidate for that that's currently on the NHL roster or even kind of knocking on the door. I would love, Mazur to be a third or fourth line guy, but he's hurt. So it is what it is.
Long term, I hope that Danielson for the rest of the season, assuming he's here, right? This is on the assumption that he's sticking around, just can solidify that third line and bring some scoring to that third line because the bottom 6, like everyone, but especially the bottom 6, the goals that we have come mostly from the top 6 throughout the season. DeBrincat got hot. Larkin's been pretty hot. Raymond had a couple stretches here and there. So if Danielson can provide a little bit of an offensive spark to the bottom 6 while playing a very cerebral two-way center game, which he's very well known to do, either directly through goals himself on that line or indirectly by making the fourth line better by having him knock a guy down there, then long-term that would be absolutely the long-term goal. I'm not going to assign a point mark for him because I think that's unfair because we don't know what he's going to be. But I need him to be an effective third-line center, at least for this season, to help provide some offensive spark for the bottom 6.
Yeah, agreed.
And I have faith that he can do that, too, because I think that Nate Danielson's just fully NHL ready.
Agreed.
Scotty, do you have anything else you want to mention today?
I don't think so, man. You look good today.
Thank you. You like my hat?
But I think, yes, I do. No, I think that's it. A few days off will hopefully be good for the boys. They've had a pretty rigorous schedule up to this point. So Yeah, hopefully the losing streak can stop here, the losing skid, but we still got a few more days, and we'll preview that, on whatever Wednesday, whenever Thursday, we'll preview it. We'll record on Wednesday, whatever. Yeah, we're good. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team
Every day.
every day.